Next talk in room number 1 is from Kitty Chan, who'll be talking on accessibility benefits beyond compliance. So not just a checkbox exercise, but maybe something helpful for business and for users. So Kitty comes with a background in graphic design mainly, and has transitioned into UX, focusing on design impacting how users use websites, and also looking at user research and figuring out that people aren't using websites because they don't understand how and they can't find anything, which sounds like a pretty common problem to me. I was just talking to students about it the other day. So, and Kitty has come through the She Codes program as well, and has met some really good connections, and apparently is how she landed this gig. So please give it up for Kitty Chan.
Hey everyone. So yeah, my name is Kitty. And he's already said a few things that I've got on my slides, so that's fine. This is actually my first talk of this sort, and I only found out about this about a week or two ago, so I'm really nervous right now, so please bear with me. Okay, so I have a dog named Max, and in my spare time, I love going camping with my husband, and our dream is to buy a caravan one day and go travel around Australia. I think that's almost everyone's dream, but anyway. So yeah. I just want to say I am not an expert in accessibility, and I don't have any formal training, so I'm just here to share about my learnings and just to prove to you that you don't need to be an expert to apply accessibility to your work. I actually just started with doing some half-day courses with Vision Australia and just kept learning from there, and I'm still learning. But I wanted to show you how easy it is to integrate it as part of your workflow. So before we get started, I wanted to play a game with you guys, just really quickly. I'm not going to ask anyone to talk because I would hate that if someone did that to me. Just wanted you to put up your hand if you find on the screen image A clear to unsee. Okay, no one? That's good, that's good. Okay, what about image B? Put your hand up if you find that. Brilliant. What about this one? Do you find put your hands up if you find image A easier to see. Okay, I think that's almost everyone. What about B? Anybody think B? Well, great, this is great. My experiment worked. This was just to show you maybe accessibility is about just a little common sense and a little empathy. Because if you find it hard to see something, well, maybe someone else with poorer eyes will find it even harder. So, accessibility is for everyone. It's not just a compliance checkbox, it's a quality requirement and a catalyst for innovation and user satisfaction. With over 2 billion people worldwide living with disabilities, inclusivity is not just a moral imperative, but a significant market opportunity for business growth. So, how does it drive business growth? Firstly, it will improve user experience. Now, accessible products are easy for everyone, right? So not just with people with visual impairments. When you improve the user experience, you increase customer satisfaction. Satisfied customers will return and also recommend your products to others. This will in turn enhance your reputation and build brand awareness for you so you can stand out among your competitors. The flip side to this is if you don't look at accessibility, you could potentially lose opportunities with clients and have very frustrated users. So you're like, okay, great, Kitty, but how? And is it hard? How do I incorporate it into my workflow? So I'm going to show you how to get started and how to make it a part of your workflow. The first thing to do is to get educated. Now, most people just fear what they don't know. And so I'm here to show you that it is really attainable and you just have to get started. So I've got, by the way, I do have a QR code that links to my slides, so don't feel like you have to copy down the links or anything. I'll show that to you at the end of the presentation. So WordPress Accessibility Day and Equalize Digital, they're leaders in accessibility for WordPress, and they have heaps of talks available for developers, content creators, designers, and they run virtual events, but they're sort of in a different time zone. So if you're like me, you value sleep, you could listen to them at your own pace because they record these sessions. And there's also short courses that you could do and from Australian companies such as Vision Australia and Centre for Accessibility. Vision Australia was the one that I actually started with as well, and it's not too expensive. If you work for an organisation, you actually can ask for a customised workshop for your team, and you can do it together. So yeah, feel free to look up that up. Don't feel like you have to watch everything and listen to everything. I found that I just picked one and started with that, and that really got me starting with applying accessibility into my work. Okay, the next thing to do is to familiarise yourself with the concept by using the tools available. And the first thing that I started with was the colour contrast checkers. I love this because as a designer, I kind of use this to my advantage. The first thing I do is when I go into an organisation is I sit down with managers or clients and I'm like, hey, guess what? Your brand isn't accessible. And which is really brilliant because, they're like, oh my goodness, we're a large organisation, we really need to get this right. It might take a little bit more, like you might actually have to show them some research. So normally if I do it for a large organisation, I pair it with some user research by asking people what they think, and usually they will come back with, hey guys, I can't see your logo, I can't read it, or it's actually really boring and outdated, which is brilliant for me because as you all probably know, it's really hard to design a website with a brand. I mean, people will nodding, yes, design a website when you really aren't happy with the logo. And so when you get to have this conversation, you get to design really great products for your clients. So this is just some examples of the color checker tools. The first one I used was this one from TPGI. They used to be owned by Vision Australia, but now they've gone to become a third party. It is the simplest and a free tool that you can download, and all you have to do is just put it on your computer and away you go. All you need to do is put in the colors together and you can see whether or not they're accessible. It's great to get started if you're just looking at branding and how that will look. The next thing, another one that you could use is Who Can Use. This one takes it a little bit further by showing how your colors look to people with different vision impairments. So if you're up for the challenge, definitely give this a go. And this one is my all-time favorite. Is there any UX designers in the room by any chance? Oh, yeah. Yes, friends. This is my all-time favorite because you literally get to use this plugin to test your prototype straight away. Before you go into development, it saves you so much time and effort. They have actually increased their offerings since I first used this. They now offer a scanner, not only just for contrast and typography, but also to give you prompts about what areas of your prototypes need more work. I'm not sure if it's free though. Okay. This one is Funkify. It's really interesting because it's just like a Chrome extension plugin, and you can actually use it to test to see what your web page or product look like for different people with visual, motor, or cognitive impairments. So if you're up for another challenge, this is something that you can use. WordPress plugins. I'm guessing everyone here uses WordPress. WordPress has 500 plugins that claim to make your website accessible, but not all of them are useful. So the one that we recommend for you to use is this one from Equalize Digital. It's free and only for a number of posts though, but it's really great to get you started because you can use it to identify and educate on yourself on the different areas that you need to look at for accessibility. And then if you've done all that and you're up for another challenge, there's the accessibility guidelines. Now, there's a lot of content here. I wouldn't have been able to start here myself, but just so you're familiar, it's really important to take note of the 4 core principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. It's really important to remember that even though it's just really good to make things accessible, but these impact your user experience as well. And you want satisfied customers to drive traffic and engagement to your website. Perceivable. This is about making your content available to everyone. Have you provided alternatives for non-text content like images? Have you provided captions and alternatives for multimedia? And have you created content that can be presented in different ways without losing meaning? And have you made it easy for users to see and hear your content? Operable. So, can visitors use all the functionality? Have you made all the essential functionalities available from keyboard? Have you given enough time to read and use the content? And have you avoided content that may cause seizures? Another thing to look out for is to provide assistance for users to navigate through your website. And understandable. Can visitors comprehend all your content? Have you made all the text readable and understandable? And is the text easy to read? Does it appear and operate in predictable ways? Robust. So robustness. Can visitors use any device? Now, this one is a little harder. I haven't been able to do this to the full gold extent, but just make sure you check it out on different devices and see how that looks. That's the best way to ensure that your website is robust. And finally, after you've done all this, if you really want to make it part of your workflow, you need to set goals. And the best way to do that is by having metrics. So it's good for tracking progress, it's good for identifying areas of improvement and demonstrating impact. Now, if you work for a company, you could probably put it into your KPIs because I'm sure your manager can help you keep you accountable. But if you're a sole trader or you work alone, one of the great advices given to me is that you can actually just tell a friend or announce it on social media. Say that you're going to give this a go. So, firstly, set goals. I've already gone through this. So next one. The second metric is you can actually test the projects that you have made accessible. I have a link to a README file on GitHub, and you can just copy and paste it from there. There's only 12 points on there. It's a great way as a template to help you look at your website and see how accessible it is. I didn't come up with this. I think Jo actually came up with this, so actually you should really see all your questions to her because she's the expert in the room. And thirdly, get feedback from your customers. If you don't work for an organisation though, and you don't have the budget to do extensive amount of research, it's a really good opportunity to use your friends and family. I haven't lost any relationships from this yet, so it should be okay. But there are a few types of people that you should probably test this on just to make sure you've covered all your bases. So for instance, older people who aren't familiar with technology like your mother, your parents or your grandma, and then people who speak English as their second language, like your Chinese or Indian friends, and people who are colorblind. So apparently 8% of males are colorblind, so just grab one of your guy friends. I'm sure they can help you out with that. And also, this one I learned from Jo actually, so test it on yourself. Take your mobile or your desktop and go into the sun and see how it looks on the screen when it's in sunlight, because this is probably the hardest and most challenging scenario you will face. Yeah, I've seen nods there, this is good. And then, that's it, oh my gosh, I must have rushed through this presentation. If you come out of this feeling really overwhelmed, just remember it's not about perfection, it's about progression. Incrementing small changes to drive big change. Start small, I did, and you'll get there. And I'm sure by the next time I see you guys, you'll be more experts than I am. So as promised, this is a QR code if you want to get the links and stuff that I share with you. And then there's also a link to my Slack on WP, is it WP Australia, yeah, sorry. I knew I'm missing a word there, and also in LinkedIn. If you have any questions that you want to reach out for, or you want a buddy to talk about accessibility, please reach out. And that's it, questions.
very much. That was fantastic. It actually validated a lot of thoughts that I'd had regarding projects that I'd been going through. One recent did a website for a client who was a community house. So we got the brief. They had WCAG 2.1 requirements. We were given the design. I went, okay, based on that reduced motion, you've got to take all that out of the design. Based on colour contrast, you've got to take this and this and this and this out of the design. And what was really sad was I found that most designers don't even know how to spell WCAG 2.1 because when they do their designs, they're not even taking that into consideration. The whole idea of designing for print as opposed to designing for screen, totally different. So, and quite frankly, I've been working with bosses and who don't even seem to give a damn about accessibility. Even like being able to have more than English is just hard enough. So, and you did give a couple of points regarding how you can kind of almost sell it, but do you have anything else to give me that you can sort of advise? Because I really want to go back to some of these people, including some people I work with, and just go, hey, accessibility, it's important. And as you said, 2 billion people on the planet have accessibility issues. It's not just 1 or 2 people. It's like every 1 in 2 or 3 people could have problems with websites. And can you just do you have anything else that you can share on that?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you go. Okay.
Take it around.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm so happy you asked this question. It's probably one of the few ones that I can actually answer. So yeah, for the last 10 years, I've been trying to do this with multiple organisations as well. And the most recent one was actually with News Corp. And it's probably the hardest people that I've worked in terms of trying to implement change because they are such a large organisation. And when I sat down and told my manager in the first 2 weeks and said, hey guys, like the logo and all the branding on the website, it fails, they were like, sorry, no, because for some odd reason, the CEO of a 10,000 person staff organisation had a personal attachment to this logo. So what you should do, or my recommendation is how I've done it, is that to go away and do some user research, because when you have stats to show, to pair with your contrast colour checkers, is to say, look, I sent it to 60 people at the time, and I was like, they all said that they couldn't read your website. And also, they thought your logo was really outdated, like it was from the 1980s. And when you're a News Corp, you can't, sorry, I hope it isn't one who works for News Corp in here. But you don't want to be that. You want to be professional. And it took a lot of convincing. Like I literally, for the first 2 weeks, took that information, like that feedback, the research findings, and like met up with like 100 people over 2 weeks just to show them these slides. Like people can't read your website, it's not accessible, the color checker on all the user feedbacks, the stats that came from the number of people that said they couldn't read it and they hated our logo. Yeah, I hope that helps because that actually convinced them and they let me redesign their logo.
I just wanted to respond to that question as well because I used to work in the area of accessibility in education, and the term universal design, which means you're designing for the whole range of people's experiences, and if you use the theory of universal design, it means you're designing for people with accessibility needs, but that also benefits the people who do not have the accessibility needs. It makes it better, it makes it easier for them to access as well. And just for an example, we were captioning or live captioning lectures for one student in a class because she was hearing impaired. But because we had those captioning, it also helped students who did have problems with wasn't English as a first language, and they were too reluctant to say I'm having trouble understanding the lecturer, and then they had a transcript of what was being said, or they could actually read it live. But other people could then, after the lecture, they could access the transcript. So it benefits people who don't identify as having an access needs, but it benefits everyone, and that's the way you can sort of say that. And sometimes when you've got content that might be based, or it might be audio needed to communicate, some people prefer to read that instead of listening because you can read a lot faster than you can listen. So by having it available as well as audio, but in written as well, then you benefit different people's learning styles. So it's like a net, you capture a wider audience by using the principles of universal design, designing for all, and therefore you have a larger market.
Yeah.
Hope that helped.
Yeah, that really does. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Firstly, well done that was your first time presenting. You did
thank
really,
you.
really well.
So I so fast.
I wanted to know from whether it's like mistakes you've made or just common ones you've seen from other designer friends or other websites. What are some common things that you've seen people like have done wrong on their website, and then you've sort of maybe you've taken on the project and you've had to go in and fix them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always noticed the color contrast issue because as you can see, I wear glasses. I have terrible eyes. So the first thing is I pick up that I struggle to see. So I know that if someone has worse eye conditions than me, they will also struggle. But I think like designers have this particular like challenge always is when you're working with a lot of content and you're trying to fit it on your page, the constant challenge is if try and fit all that is to use smaller font to compensate for all the text that you have to use. This is really hard, and look, it's always a challenge. Like I currently work for news, and I'm working on a data intelligence platform. So while like I'm constantly trying to like make sure that the font is accessible, they're like, you have to put this content in because the users need to know this, and it's like, oh my god, how do I actually do this? But my recommendation is that it's opportunity for innovation. And there are a lot of things you can do to convey like text or, so just, I guess, experiment. And this is the only way, unfortunately, because each scenario is different and I would just have to keep testing. And this is a great part of being a UX designer is because it's not about getting it right the first time. It is about iteration and just keep going and then you will keep learning from that. Yeah.
Yeah, two things. First being a comment and then a question. I just wanted to add to what's already been said about universal design and so on, just another recommendation with that is like, so what I think you were sort of getting at, and I think we've done it before, that accessibility is often viewed as being about people with disabilities being about this minority. And we really need to drive home, as you mentioned, accessibility is for everyone. And an old colleague of mine, Kobe, if she's watching, credit to her for this, who gave a presentation on accessibility. She gave a bunch of examples of ways that people can be temporarily impaired, and it really drove home sort of the everyday sort of situations that people can find themselves in. So it's not like, oh, I just have to imagine I'm blind and then it's, my thing will be accessible. Do things like if you have like a broken arm or something and you can only use one hand, and we're assuming people can type with two hands, we're assuming people can use a mouse, all of that. Try to put people in the shoes of various kinds of impairments and say, well, you play this sport every weekend, what if you broke your arm, how would you use this website? So I just wanted to add that suggestion as well.
Thank you.
And now to my question. So something I find super frustrating in like sort of the WordPress world and where people are able to edit all of their own content and they're using blocks and patterns, all sort of things, is document structure, so HTML structure. So how a lot of assistive technologies really rely on proper landmarks, navigation should be in a nav element, lists should be lists, heading levels should be heading levels. Do you have any recommendations on how to test and sort of enforce and train people on making sure the document structure is actually correct?
Yeah. So the checklist that I have on GitHub, sorry, I didn't actually have an example of it, but if you just go on the link, you'll be able to see it. This is a great way to work through that. It's only 12 points. It's so much like concise and easy if you're just starting out to work on what you need to do. Yeah, for text sizes, like all sorts of things, yeah.
Hey Kitty, thank you for your talk up here. I know you touched briefly on WordPress plugins for accessibility, and I think this probably touches slightly on that last question that was asked, but some of the plugins accessibility plugins that kind of just drop a accessibility widget in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen.
Yeah.
Like, are those sort of things enough to satisfy the accessibility of a website, or do you need to go further than that?
Do you want to speak on this one?
Who wants to go on this one?
Yeah, I was like...
it would be really mean to throw Kitty under the bus for this particular question, because I asked her to do this talk a week ago, and she doesn't have a huge amount of experience with accessibility plugins on WordPress, and we had a long talk about this, and the reality is that most accessibility professionals will not recommend accessibility plugins in general, especially the kind of ones that you're talking about that stick a widget in the bottom corner and just, there we go, that's my accessibility done, sorted. And the reason why we went with Equalise Digital as the recommendation, and using things like the content checklist, which by the way is specifically designed for content creators, and you can find it on the training handbook as well. And the reason that a lot of these things, they tend to rely quite heavily on JavaScript, and a lot of the technology that they use actually ends up creating more accessibility problems than it solves. So the reason why Equalise Digital was the plugin that we put on there as a recommendation, because Kitty did kind of say, do you have any recommendations? I'm not familiar with enough of them, is because it's not about fixing accessibility on a website, it's about helping you, helping educate the users and identify potential problems so that you can fix them yourself. So it's about fixing the cause rather than trying to stick a Band-Aid on top of a broken arm. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Sorry, just to add to that. Sorry, if you go to Google and you search for overlay fact sheet, you'll get a website that tears apart pretty much every accessibility overlay that attempts to fix problems after the fact, because you can't. You have to do it from the start. It has to be considered as part of the design process.
Maybe I need to talk to my psychologist about this instead, but I've been having one-to-one coaching from a really amazing Tassie couple who are accessibility experts, and my eyes are now opened to the world of accessibility, and I've realised how much I've been failing my clients and the whole of my community who access my clients' websites in that aspect. And so I'm absolutely frantically every week learning something new and trying to go back to my quite a large number of clients and make these changes on their websites, which I'm obviously then not making any money from. Can't focus on new projects because I'm so consumed by the fact that, I mean, in the builder I use is inherently quite inaccessible, and so now I'm like, I need to shift builders, I need to completely change everything about my business. I know it's know better, do better, and obviously my new projects that I do now are going to be with that in top of mind. Again, maybe it's not the right question to ask you specifically, but can you make me feel better? How can I, like, maybe I'll go to that checklist and that will answer some questions for me, but I obviously want to backtrack and fix some really core issues, like even some of my sites you can't tab through with a keyboard, like it's a core functionality issue, so I'm adjusting it. How can I manage that now that my eyes are open to it, I guess? I don't know. It's a pretty open-ended question, I'm so sorry, but yeah. Can you alleviate my guilt in any way?
Yeah. Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, okay.
And like, honestly, I don't think anyone here could just say, I'm always going to get it right all the time. And you're always learning, which is, that's all you can do is to keep learning. And all of us have made mistakes. So I think I did my first 10 years before I did the accessibility training, I probably made all the same mistakes. And it's still hard. Like, and you were dealing with clients, and I think I spoke to 3 people who were talking about their experience with clients. Like, not everyone will still listen to you, even though you make these recommendations. You can only do your best. But research is your friend. That's how I make my arguments in large corporate organizations. Like, I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully that will help you feel like confident about it.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah, seriously.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, to lead into that, we all as designers and developers go through a process where we start out early in our career simply trying to get something done. And over time, you build on that skill set, you learn new things, and accessibility and performance, and something I'm talking about later, is
all this stuff that comes later down the track. You can't possibly know it from the start. So backtracking and going back and fixing things, yeah, I've been there. It's not fun, but it's an evolution of your skill set, your learning.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
This is from a design perspective. How do you balance, from us being designers wanting to do pretty stuff or visually attractive stuff that the clients see and want? How do you balance that with being accessible and being there top of mind as well?
Yeah, so I try to be accessible first and work out my boundaries. So it's kind of like any brief way, this is your boundary and accessibility is one of my boundaries. And then it is not easy, but just to work around that, like, so these colors, I probably prefer to use this blue instead of that one. It is hard, you're a creative person, you want to push your boundaries. But when you start instilling this into your practice, it becomes like, okay, this is what I need to work with, how do I make this look awesome and pretty? I also do a lot of research. Like before I design anything, I want to know what's out there in the universe. Like I go on Pinterest, I go on Instagram, I look at Dribble or whatever. There's all these things that you could use to get some inspo on how to make things. Like if there's clients have set colors for you and you're like, I don't know. So do research, see what other people do. That's how I find I get inspiration. Yeah.
Hello. Mine's more of a comment. I guess I build on something that was said before, but also I want to say well done. That was really great for your first talk. And very encouraging for me, who will be doing my first talk tomorrow, so it was great.
Woohoo!
I guess I just wanted to touch on the resistance from clients or people who aren't educated in this area. And you mentioned, you just say the word accessibility and there's kind of just like this eye roll of like, oh, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
But I've found that when I'm like communicating or trying to educate what this space is, like coming from the universal design perspective and just UX in general, I find that like giving an example that they can relate to really, really helps. So one that I often use is like, when everyone watches like streaming on platforms, right? If you compare it to like Netflix, where you come back onto the thing and you can click on the show that you're watching and it starts straight from where it was, versus a platform that, not to be named, like, it will go straight to the start of that episode and you don't know where you were. Like, that's not great UX. So if I like compare it to something that's adjacent, I find that really helps them understand, like, you as an able-bodied person, that's an inconvenience for you trying to use this product. So yeah, being able to provide that example really, really helps for them to understand.
That's great advice, yeah. Okay.
Just a quick question. Have you used the Google Lighthouse tool for accessibility?
I actually haven't.
Google Chrome has a developer tool set. It generally does a Lighthouse audit as one of them. Lighthouse audit comes up with 4 different properties that it'll compare any website, anywhere, anytime without any problem. One of the 4 categories is accessibility, and every one of the categories, including performance and SEO and the like, it will generate a list of points where it feels you are capable of improving.
Okay.
The performance comes up as a percentage, so you can have an accessibility at like 100% down to 20% or whatever, depending on how well you've built your website. But that's a quick audit system that you could use to determine, firstly, how well Google thinks your accessibility is. It normally brings up points like contrast. Text is not easy to read because of contrast. On colours, size of buttons, whether 2 buttons are too close together so that they need more space because you can't touch it cleanly. The audit can be done either on a desktop or as a mobile response, and they will give different scores depending on the devices that they're working on. I just thought that you might want to at least be aware of the tool, because it's available to anybody that uses the Chrome browser, which is a free browser for everybody to use. And if you're not aware of it, you probably need to investigate that a little bit more. If you are aware of it, then how do you find it?
Google Lighthouse, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Yes, great talk, Kitty. Thanks. When your clients challenge you that accessibility is boring or ugly, how do you answer this? Do you show them examples of beautifully designed, accessible, that are websites that are accessible, or how do you reply to this comment?
Yeah, definitely examples of accessibility, but also I think usually when I'm telling them that their current logo is inaccessible or boring, I usually try and give suggestions as well, if I have the time, just so that they can see the difference. And because accessibility increases the contrast, right? And usually it means that they're not boring because they're bright and beautiful and bold. So definitely show examples. And if you could if you have time to mock them up, to just show the difference, that would be absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Sorry, there's the last question?
I'm just going to add one thing there. Something else you might want to look up is one of the resources that Kitty shared on there was accessibility, the Centre for Accessibility Australia, and they have the Access Awards every year. So that's a great opportunity to have a look at people that are winning awards for their accessible sites. So you can go on there and find ones that you like the look of and be like, see, they've won an award for their accessibility and theirs isn't ugly, so there's no excuses.
So there's a question on how accessibility's impact on SEO and how that could be used as a tool to sell to the client.
Oh, yeah. I can't answer that one, sorry. I don't know the answer to that. Do you want to answer it?
I kind of can. A lot of the things that help accessibility help SEO. So yeah, they almost go hand in hand to some extent, because image alt tags are going to help your SEO. It's going to help people read what the image content is. So
There's a reason it's
there's
a
a lot of
lighthouse.
overlay between the two, but there's also things that are quite separate. But
And the fact that Google Lighthouse does accessibility checks also implies that anything that's done for accessibility will improve for SEO.
Yeah.
yeah. Quick question.
I was sneaking your last one.
With WCAG, I don't know how to pronounce it, WCAG 2.0, they've got two standards. They've got AA and AAA. I have a similar client right now I'm designing for, and their brand colour, which is very predominant and it's very important to them, doesn't pass the tests.
But against what?
So against white. And the website, and that's the brand. White and orange is the two colours, and that's.
Okay.
Do you aim for a AA or AAA, or is it just changes based on the?
I mean, like the gold star would be AAA, but it is not always possible. Like that's the honest opinion. But yeah, like I've had a client where this has happened. There's contrast, but so what I do is I do flip it. So one was like black, white, and yellow were the colours, and they kept putting white on yellow. That was their main colour. So I was like, hey, it's not, you can't see this. So I used, because luckily black was also in their colour, and I showed them like how much more bolder it was using the white on the black, and designed, like I showed them through merchandise, I showed them through the website, like everything to show how much more fun it was to make it higher with contrast. And yeah.
Like shadows and outlines.
Yeah. Black shadow or white writing can work on almost any contrast.
There you go, yeah.
The AA, AAA thing is about context. Now, if you're developing a government site, anything less than a AAA is a non-starter, right? It is mandated legal requirement because it is public sector and needs to be accessible. By every single user.
They
now,
don't get to decide them.
go for something like McDonald's. It's not going to be AAA, but minimum AA because their audience is varied. Context.
Okay, we'll take one more question before lunch.
It was more of a comment than a question. Just wanted to add to the answer you gave about the SEO element. So I mentioned like document structure for I want my headings right and all of that. And that's because like then our page can be read more easily by machines. And machines mean both assistive technologies like screen readers and like navigation aids and things, but it also means Google and other search engine crawlers and anything else that might be aggregating content. So yeah, that might help with how you might sell the SEO benefit is if we have this really good document structure, this is going to help us rank, and it's also going to help with our accessibility.
Cool. Thanks.
Great.
And be printable.
Yeah, I find myself regularly telling my students, Google is blind. That's it. If your client ever has issues with accessibility and supporting that, 3% of people over there that are blind and we don't really care about them as customers, yeah, Google is blind, right? And if you look into the HTML element potentially worth $18 million to Indiegogo, if you haven't read that article, you should. It's about one HTML element possibly costing Indiegogo $18 million of revenue. So if anyone flips it and is like, money, 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 you're like, no, seriously, fix it.
Wow.
Yeah, thanks, Kitty. That was awesome. And I think everyone obviously engaged with it really, really well. So you did a great job. So yeah, give Kitty a hand.